True transformation happens when two things happen. One, it's synergy, and the other one is ethics and values. And for me, both of these things are really important. And so the synergy is finding ways for humans and technology to complement each other's strengths, leading to outcomes greater than the sum of their parts. And if we are prompting properly, and if we are engaging the technology, if we are being polite, if we are using it responsibly, then that synergy really can happen. So that's what we need to think of from our involvement point of view. And then from an ethics and values point of view, it's ensuring technological advancements are guided by strong ethical principles. So how often have you actually read the T's and C's of the AI tools that you are using? How safe is your data? Are you checking on their ethics and values, or are you just using the tool? And so part of our responsibility, I think, as people using these tools, is we should be making these companies accountable. If we see that there's things that are not appropriate, we should be emailing them or flagging it in their system. If we're seeing things that inappropriate content can be produced and that they're not living up to the age restrictions for children, I think those are the kinds of things we should flag. And so by having these strong ethical principles, they should be guided and centered on human well-being and societal benefit. And if you look at the UNESCO's and a couple of other documents that have been written around that, being human centered is really important in terms of the technology. So for me, I really loved the way this was described. So then for me is, as an African, why is it really important to have a critical lens in terms of using AI resources and tools? Well, we live in an interesting space. So, for example, in our country, in 2023, there were 59 million people, and it described, the study described our economy as highly developed and advanced, with an advanced infrastructure. And we were the only country in the region that had both access to 5G and key cloud providers. So Microsoft, Google, Amazon, so AWS is Amazon, and IBM. And they saw this as a really impressive foundation to help its people to reap the benefits of AI technologies. So we need to say to ourselves, how is this being developed and used? This was already 2 years ago. We saw that the South African Artificial Intelligence Association, which by the way is a free association, was looking to see how do we grow these partnerships more. And we're looking at what China University was doing, where they were actually opened as one of the hubs by the government. But the key challenges for this AI adoption are the lack of skilled workers they found, and a lack of data and infrastructure. And you heard that now in the presentation that you just heard before this. So how is this then impacting our society as a whole? As a country, we have a national policy framework. If you haven't read it, go and have a look. The draft is still on the Communications and Department of Communications and Digital Technologies platform. But there they were looking at emphasizing ethical development. The framework seems to prioritize responsible development for AI that aligns to South African values and principles, and that's what they talk about. But then when you look at the actual table of contents, or you look at the document as a whole, it talks about, look at the order of the things. It talks about talent development, infrastructure, research and development, and then ethical AI guidelines is only fifth, and privacy and security are even lower down. And for me, the interesting thing is talking about human control of technology, professional responsibility, and promotion of cultural values. Well, those weren't even in the table of contents. They were just found on page 11. And for me, it's saying, how do we then engage around this? So you could write comments last year, and I was cheeky enough to write a comment and said, but if we want these things where we're talking about capacity development and stuff, Surely we need things to be safe first. Surely we need to have the ethics and the policies around how we want countries to, or the people within our country to be building this, that we want safety and security. I mean, we've got the POPI Act, but surely it's not so far down the list. We want transparency so we know where our data is going and all those kinds of things. And for me, I think we need to be open to having these discussions. Then in terms of if you really want your voice to be heard, think about joining something like the South African Technology Association. It's free. There's an amazing active WhatsApp group, and it looks at collaboration with governance. There are conferences, there are webinars, there's individual engagement on the WhatsApp group, but it's one way that you can be aware of all these new developments and things within the space. We've also got South African developers who are looking to fight the inequality. So if you look at what Lelapo is doing and what Isizwe is doing, they are looking at how do we actually tackle the language issue. And imagine if we really got this really right, where a child could take whatever textbook they've got, pop it in, and it would give it to them in their home language or the language that they speak as a mother tongue or that they're most proficient in. I mean, I think that's where this kind of technology can really change the way we engage. Another example for me would be if you think of some very rural communities in our country where people can only speak their language. So if a visitor goes there and can't speak the language, then there's a lack of communication. Imagine if you both pulled out your phones, or even just one person pulled out the phone and spoke in their language, and it automatically translated and spoke to the person in their language. Just think about how these technologies can do that. In fact, inside of a Google Meet now, you can set that up so that if the people from two different languages, it will actually translate it and they'll just hear the language in their country. Then looking at how do we really change the way we teach. And for me, this was interesting in terms of a couple of weeks ago where the lecturer from Free State University was talking about rethinking science education in the age of AI. How are we changing everything that we're doing in terms of engaging with our students? So if I ask you now to become an AI output detective, I want you to look critically at these pictures. Which of these pictures shows less AI bias and why? Tell me the letters in the chat and tell me why, or tell us why. Why do you think it shows less bias? Hope you don't take too long to looking at these pictures. You're all very quiet. So if we look at these two pictures, there's a ping. Let's see what the ping says. A and C. A and C show less bias. That's interesting. A shows less bias. That's interesting. So my views are completely different to yours then. So I selected B and D. And I suppose my lens was completely different when I was looking at that. I look at pictures when I look at them and I think AI generally assumes that everybody's white. And so it makes almost everybody white. And if we think about our country, where only sort of 10% of the people are of lighter shade or of white complexion, the AI should be the other way around. But then I suppose if I do look at these two critically, there is only one group of people in them. This one has only got one African person in it here, and the rest are all white. And this one, I think, is this man over here when I looked at those. So I suppose if we then look at this really critically, none of them are actually unbiased. And that's where the way we prompt and how we ask the tools to create things, that we need to describe our learners, describe our situation. So when I rewrote the prompts to make them what I was thinking was unbiased, I just said African. I didn't say a range of different nations. And you can put into your prompts that you want 10% to be this and 90% to be that. And the more information we give them, the better output. But thanks to those of you who are coming. Thanks, Dominique. Yeah, a mixture of different people, women and men. So thanks. Hi, Dominique. So why should universities embrace AI technologies with the critical lens? So for me, we know that the AI detectors don't work. And since the beginning of the sort of craziness of what's happened since the launch of ChatGPT, we've seen all sorts of things happening. And in the States, there have been a range of cases. So I think that we need to really think about how we use the tools and that the technology can make mistakes. And so therefore, as lecturers and as teachers, we really need to be discerning. A report came out earlier this year describing UK universities and all of them who were talking about a breakdown of AI and cheating statistics across the UK universities. And I suppose we've got to say, should we be changing the way we teach? Should we be thinking differently? And then there's the thing that's happened over the last few weeks with UNISA, who speaks about, where the article was put out saying that ChatGPT, the cheating scandal, where students were flagged, but it was incorrect. And then the university put out a comment around that within the description around that as well, and saying that that's not accurate. And then if we then look at what's happened in the States again, how many of them turned it in off because they saw the frequency of false positives, the disproportionate impact of non-native English speakers, that they didn't want students to be falsely accused. And so we hear these stories again and again. And then we've seen what UCT has done, where they've scrapped using AI detectors, and they have these amazing policies in terms of how you can use technology within the university. So the other side of this is that we know the students use the technology. So for example, in STEM subjects as undergraduates and academics, we see them using a range of platforms. We look at personalized learning platforms, their grammar checkers, visual checkers, Quillbot. Some of them still use Turnitin, MATLAB, Google Cloud, WordTune, and a range of others. So what tools do you use? I'd love for you, while I'm carrying on talking, just write a list or give one or two ideas of what are the AI tools that you actually use. And let's see the range we end up with in the chat. So if we now think of our higher education students using AI, what are the findings in terms of we see with the students? Well, the students use a range of AI-powered tools over ChatGPT, including translation and referencing tools. They use online writing assistants such as Quillbot. So 46% of them said they use tools to improve their writing styles for assignments. More than 80% of them use Grammarly or similar tools to write appropriate language or English language. 37% use ChatGPT to answer an essay question. And the students acknowledged that the AI-powered tools could lead to plagiarism or affect their learning, but they stated that they weren't actually using the tools in problematic ways. They saw it as really being beneficial. And so that the AI tools were making it easier to progress through university. And I suppose that was a really interesting point. So this study was from 2023, and I'm sure that number has grown in terms of that. And then if we look at the challenges of adopting it from an African higher institution's point of view, we see challenges that lecturers are highlighting is the lack of institutional support and infrastructure, limited training opportunities and knowledge gaps, concerns about ethical implications and the need for regularity frameworks, and varying levels of adoption among the different disciplines. And then the benefits were individualized learning experiences, improved student learning and engagement, enhanced academic performance and advancement, improved research and administrative processes, increased awareness and usage of generative AI for information retrieval, self-learning, and content generation. So the AI tools were used to help them. So from a non-home language, English speakers used it to improve their academic writing, to clarify academic concepts, to formulate ideas, to structure essays, improve your academic writing, to save time, to spell check and to do grammar checks, to clarify assignment instructions, to find information or academic sources, to summarize academic text, to study for tests, to paraphrase better, and to avoid plagiarism. And then reference better. Those are all things that we want children to be able to do, and we want students to be able to do. So how do we build this into the way we assess? So most students viewed AI tools as beneficial to their learning process. They used the tools to clarify concepts related to their studies that they couldn't fully grasp or get and felt that they were not properly explained by lecturers. And so if you've got a support like that, why shouldn't we be letting students use this? And so why do we want this? Well, we need to think about how we address this effectively, because we want to be relevant as universities. The technology is not going away. The students are using it, and we want to be future focused. The learners, and we want the learners to be focused. We want to upskill them in AI. We want to teach them how to use it. We want to teach them to be responsible AI users. We want to be sustainable. We want to enhance operational efficiency, optimize resource management, and really promote sustainable practices. So if we then think about the concerns that lecturers have, there are things like over-reliance. So the concerns are undermining critical thinking, over-reliance on AI, job losses, educators' strong criticisms and fears, dehumanization of learning, inaccuracies of information, surface level learning, bias and fairness, technical limitations, institutional barriers, structural changes, and privacy and ethical issues. These are real concerns. So how do we address these in things that we're trying to achieve? And then if we look at initial apprehensive and negativity towards AI, the misuse by students and the hesitancy of initial hesitancy of using AI. And then if we look at benefits and cautious optimism, is it's unavoidable and it's useful. The brainstorming and idea generation, organizational benefits, supporting writing structures, enhanced critical thinking if used correctly, resource accessibility and speed, tailored learning pathways, so your offer of 24/7 support, feedback, different learning styles, automated tasks and freeing up time, predicting students' performance, patient and unfrustrated support, accommodating diverse learning styles. Those are also things that we find useful and could really benefit students. And then timely feedback. And then ambivalent and cautious optimism is they're excited about it and they're scared. And I suppose in some ways I feel like that about AI. I love what I'm seeing. I'm also scared of the negative, really scared of the negative. And there's always potential and challenges. And so we need to balance this. In everything, there's a good and a bad. And so how are we changing the way we engage, how we teach, and how we interact? So therefore, we really need to switch on this critical lens. It's being used. We are using it. The students are using it. So how do we make it really effective? We then should be looking at it from an ethical point of view as well. So if we look at a whole lot of different ethical systems, there's sort of a common thread, which you find in the UN systems, where they talk about do no harm, define purpose and a necessity, safety and security when using it, fairness and non-discrimination, the sustainability of it, the right to privacy and data protection, human autonomy and oversight, transparency and explainability, responsibility and accountability, and inclusion. And these things are also really important. And again, it's do we click on the T's and C's and go and check that? And then on top of that, we should be aware of bias. AI can be very biased in terms of how it was trained. So for example, availability bias looks at what was put into the tool when it was being trained in terms of the focus area or the access of an area, and then replicating that across different areas. Or confirmation bias, which reaffirms existing beliefs and ignores perhaps research that shows something else, or contextual bias, which doesn't understand the context perhaps of language, or training bias, where, for example, when they started with facial recognition, most of the representatives were white people, and so the attempts on facial recognition for people of color took much longer until they got more people around there, because it's just a tool. We've got to remember, these are just machines that are being trained, and what they've been trained on then impacts how they react. Algorithmic bias literally talks to how it's programmed, and if it then takes some information and it's only trained on a certain group of people, and then it puts that information, perhaps unintentionally, but still it gives you a false comment if you're in a different country or a different area, that the income might be different for a job. And then the cognitive bias is favoring data sets where they've gathered a certain group of people. So, for example, if they've gathered information from America and they've used that sample and then said it's for everybody around the world. And the same would be if you're using tools from China and the data set assumes that everybody is like the people in China, and it just assumes that it's the same. So those are the kinds of biases we need to be aware of. And again, from an African point of view, another bias that we really need to be aware of is this huge digital divide. And because there's a huge digital divide, we actually make very little data. So even when these big models are saying, look for data everywhere, the amount that we produce only is a fraction of what is available from other countries or other areas. And so therefore the bias towards us from an African point of view exists. So we can actually help, because every time you put a prompt in, you're actually teaching the computer. So from a South African point of view, whether you're a lecturer or a teacher, if we actually say that we're from South Africa, we explain our context, we explain our learners, we explain our curriculum, our answers are so much better than if you just leave that kind of information out. So giving it contextual information is really, really important, just as it is in terms of giving it content information. Then what about all the different publications? If we work in a higher education institution, we shouldn't just be relying on the leadership to be looking at things. So how many of you have actually gone and looked at these different frameworks that are there and the suggestions? So yes, it's a big document, but there's actually lots of little tips and things inside of them. So UNESCO has developed a range of different documents. Co.org has worked with also a range of different companies and has a range of different resources in all sorts of spaces, from the World Health Organization to the OECD and all sorts. So look out for these types of things. The other thing that we should have is a policy, a user policy in terms of how are we supposed to behave within this organization and use AI. And if you don't have a policy, it's the kind of thing that you should be saying to the leadership that we should be doing it. You could even start with a temporary one just in your department. So thinking about why it's important. So these skills include looking at really being informed. So know how the technology is going to support the learning and develop curiosity. Looking at it from an inclusive point of view, making sure learners are respectful of others and see the value of differing viewpoints. And looking at it being balanced. So practice balancing the technological use with other activities and recognizing digital activities have more value than perhaps other things, and seeing is that true and how that would fit into the policy. And then looking at engagement. So the use of technology to make learners, school and local communities better and help solve problems. So these are the kinds of things that we could be including in. And then being alert, practicing principles of online safety and creating safe spaces for others in terms of the policy. The policy should include things like the scope and purpose in terms of the learners, but also the staff, and it should fit into your existing policies. It should align to POPI from a safety and a security point of view, There should be ethical guidelines in terms of how we should use the tools within there, and also include being polite. Create an environment for continuous learning about AI, the benefits, the limitations, the risks. So if people are assessing these different things, that everybody knows about it in the organization. Promoting the evaluation of AI tools to provide guidelines on how to assess the tools. Provide a digital space where AI evaluation can be reported and accessed by the staff members, and ensure inclusive and accessible AI support for learners with disabilities, and provide individualized learning. And this policy, more than any other policy, needs to be updated really regularly because of how the tech is changing. So now, if we know all of this, if we know that there's this whole big world outside of actually even beginning to use the tools, how do we switch on this lens? So I'm going to ask you now to be an AI output detective. Let's see how you develop your critical lens. Let's look at your views. So if we look at this little scenario, you'll see it says the Great Soweto Maize Shortage of 1978. A little known event. Over 3 weeks in June 1978, an entire supply of maize meal in Soweto mysteriously vanished. Local legend attributes this to a rogue government experiment going wrong, intended to create a new drought-resistant super maize. Eyewitness accounts were unverified, and so the story goes on. My question to you is this real? And it's an AI-generated output comment. So the brief was a summary for a specific obscure local historical event that is likely to have inaccurate and partially fabricated information. So what can you see here that's real and not real? How would you critically evaluate it? Think about it and pop some ideas into the chat. I'm going to look and see what has been written already. Ah, thank you. Yes, thank you for all the comments about the people. That's great. Oh, I also love Notebook LM. Yeah, and Gemini. Magic School's also really nice. As in AI, I never tried Canva's AI. I use Canva, but I haven't tried it. Claude, oh yes, Claude does some really great things. Thanks for that whole long list, Dominique. Thanks for Amar for agreeing with her. So also just using, it's difficult to find digital tools that doesn't have, that's very, very, very true. In fact, I think it's any app, never mind just like learning tools. I think it's everything. Are there any comments? What do you think? What do we do with stuff like this? Is it true? How do we check it? So I'm going to move on. Think about doing stuff like this with your students, where you know it's inaccurate and you get them to check it. That you then making them put on their critical lens. That they have to take ownership of how they are engaging with AI. First of all, they should fact check it. They should fact check it, first of all, with local sources. So what's around? What do they know? How do they find out? And go and see. Then they should evaluate the AI's responses. They could supplement it with other methods, such as other AI or human experiments. They could ask for URLs and then double check those URLs are accurate. So we need to teach our students how to become these critical AI detectives. And so if we have these kinds of activities where we're making them think, we can get them to be engaged. What about this one? What do you think of this? Top list of top 10 scientists of all time. It's also AI generated. So what are your comments and views? So the prompt was list 10 top scientists of all time. So how would you evaluate these responses? What are the critical things you could discuss around this list? And is it true? And how do we check it? So if we now look at this scenario of this supposed list of top scientists or perhaps even famous authors, the user then had to then create the prompt to say, hey, please can you then create this list? So what is the potential bias that we see here? First of all, we see it's heavily skewed towards males, generally Western European or North American scientists. We see there are no scientists of color, and we see there's only one woman, Marie Curie. So despite significant contributions from women and scientists from a diverse range of races and ethnic backgrounds throughout history, and there are examples that are given. And so this output can demonstrate a gender and racial bias, reflecting potential imbalances in the AI's training where the contributions of certain groups may be underrepresented. So when I wrote this prompt, I actually asked it to be one group of people. So you can create these kinds of things that you know they've got the errors in, and then get the students to have a look at it. So to create a better prompt, to get a more balanced or accurate list or improve the prompting, the prompt might say a list of 10 influential scientists from diverse backgrounds, and you can say gender, race, nationality, historical period, and then briefly mention their key contributions. Why do you think this kind of prompt would give you a better result? If anybody would like to put something into the chat. Thank you for that. The long comment, thank you. Colette, thank you. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is we just need to be critical. And that's the whole point of this discussion is we need to be aware. Our RAS needs to be open all the time when we're using AI. We need to take ownership of it. We should never just put something in an AI tool, see the answer and send it. Never, ever, ever. And so we need to teach our students the same thing. Put your critical lens on this one. This is a lesson plan. What do you think of this lesson plan? So you'll see that it gives you an idea, it gives you an introduction, but look what it says is history is about dates, and then why are the dates important? And then the direct instruction is list 10 or 15 historical dates. The teacher briefly explains the event associated with them. The students are instructed to copy all the dates and events into their notebooks. Teacher emphasizes the importance of memorizing these dates. Then they look at date matching. So the teacher calls out the dates and the students have to associate it with the information. If a student is incorrect, the teacher provides the correct answer. They repeat the dates again. The assessment is a short quiz. Conclusion, the teacher iterates the importance of knowing historical dates. Memorize all the dates for the next class test. So this is also AI generated, the comments and the views. Was it critically evaluated and how? How did you check it? So if we think about this lesson, why is this lesson not good? So one, it lacks any specific context for the students. It doesn't tell you what history, it doesn't tell you, so it's not local, the events or relevant into their lives, and it's very general. The dates are broad and disconnected. So that's the first thing. And why is this a lesson generic and pedagogically unsound? Well, if we look at it, we'll see that pedagogically it's unsound because it's rote memorization. So we're not actually getting the children to think critically. The context and the contents and the cause and effects of relationship are not really explained. So the children are just doing it from memory. There's no understanding, which is really bad from a teaching point of view. There's a lack of critical thinking. The students are not asked to analyze or interpret or question or connect to the events. They're simply passive recipients of the information. There's no engagement other than the children putting up their hands and answering the question. The activities are repetitive and they don't encourage curiosity or discussion or deep learning. From a teaching point of view, it's teacher-centered. So the teacher is the sole dispenser of the knowledge, and it's irrelevant to real-world applications. Knowing all the dates in isolation doesn't help students to understand. So we can getting AI to create these bad things, like you've just seen these 3 examples. We can also be getting AI to create really useful, meaningful learning spaces. We can use these bad examples to show students how they must reflect and look and learn from them. But we can also be changing the way we assess. So we need to put on our critical lenses. We need to always fact check. We need to evaluate the AI's response. We need to supplement what it's done, maybe comparing it with other AI tools, maybe talking to people, but we need to check and check and check again before we use it. So think about how we're going to create critical users. What if there were groups provided with a checklist for things like this? So you could say to your students, if this is a task, look for accuracy. Does it seem factually correct? What would you cross-reference? Maybe look at bias. Are there any stereotypical assumptions in this? Who might be excluded or misrepresented? Looking at plausibility or quality. Does it make sense? Is it genuinely useful or is it just superficially good? What if you provide the groups with looking at accuracy? Does it meet and seem factually right? And what would you cross-reference? I've just put this twice, sorry. So getting the students to really just think about it. Another way of looking at it is playing games. So this game is in Google Arts and Culture, and I don't think I've got enough time to play it now, but it's really cool because what it does is Google Arts and Culture, if you've never been onto the website, go on, it's brilliant. If you're looking for anything related to art and culture from a very wide point of view, including science and maths and all sorts of things. But what Odd One Out does is it pulls 3 real artwork pictures and then it creates an AI generated one. And you've got to try and guess which is the AI one. It's a fun kind of activity also to show children how accurately the AI draws pictures, and you could have really meaningful discussions around that. But then you could also use these tools to talk about creativity. So in the same website, there's Musical Canvas. And in Musical Canvas, you create a little doodle, and then you select the instruments, and it actually, no, you don't select instruments in Musical Canvas. You ask it to generate, and it then creates music related to your picture. Go and explore these kinds of tools and see how you could have discussions, even with old students, so university students, not even with school, in terms of how AI is working, what are the things they can learn from tools like this. Put these kinds of activities in to engage with them. So then let's think about the prompt power in terms of mastering effective AI. So large language models are a form of artificial intelligence. They are generally text-based, and they're trained on huge sets of data. And the examples might be ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot or even Meta AI, the WhatsApp chatbot. And then generative AI creates all sorts of other data training things. So it makes images and music and code and other types. And in the last few months, these 2 technologies, which were separate, have been merged. And you'll see that large language models, which we thought were just large language models, now can make images. So you see the 2 technologies have combined. But all of these technologies need a prompt, whether the prompt is text or even verbal. It needs to be told what it's going to make. So when you communicate with AI, you are prompting. So what is a prompt? It's the act of providing the tool with an instruction. So giving it clues, asking it for help and giving instructions. The prompts help you to learn and to grow. And it's also examples. It can also give you examples in terms of, if you give it examples, it makes your prompts better, and it provides content and context. When you do that, your prompts get better. So using AI ethically and responsibly, why do we need to do this? Because we want the AI and the people using it, we want a respect for others. We want academic integrity, and we want data privacy. So these things you've got to think about in terms of these big policies and the small things that we're doing when we're using the AI. So we need to prompt accurately. So the concept of prompt engineering is asking smart questions and getting smart answers. And the key is 4 good points. You want clarity, you want specificity, you want context, you want the persona, and you want constraints, and you want format. Oh, this one's 6. I was thinking of another one. So you've got 6 different things that you want to include. You want to be clear in terms of your sentence. You want to be very specific. You want to have context so that it knows who it's relating to. You want to describe who it's for, or its role. Is it for students? Is it for adults? Is it for parents? You want to talk about the constraints. How many or how long? Do you want a summary? Do you want questions? And if so, how many? And you want the format. Do you want an essay or a letter or a reply to an email? The more information you put into your prompt, the better the response you get. So planning your prompt is really, really important. And so you tell it what kind of thing that you want so that you get that kind of information out. My suggestion is you do your planning on another sheet, not inside the tool, where you're not interrupted by the bells and whistles of the AI. Go and plan it somewhere else. And once you've done that, paste it into your tool. So you then copy the response that you've got from the tool out, and you read that really critically. You then edit and adjust that prompt. You decide 2 things. 1, it's ready to use because you've checked it and you're happy with it and you've made some changes and it's okay. Or you create a new prompt, what you've learned from the AI, and you now begin the conversation again. And you keep refining until you're happy with what you get out. What we really need to also look at is analyzing the information. So always ask for URLs and then go and click on those URLs and see that they're real. Remember, AI is trying to please you. So it'll pretend that things are wrong. So look at it and see how you can actually get things right within that space. So when we look at things like this, which of these 2 prompts do you think is better, A or B? And I think I'm running out of time, so I'm going to just move forward. So B is the bad prompt. Why is it bad? Because it's vague, it lacks specificity, it isn't a grade level, the topic detail, number of ideas, desired learning style, doesn't give you a group size, and the details to include for each idea are not there. And so the AI is likely to generate a very generic or irrelevant suggestion requiring significant refinement from the user. Whereas this one is much better, where it tells you create a list of 5 creative project ideas for grade 7 natural science on renewable energy. The ideas must encourage hands-on learning and be specific for groups of 3 to 4 students. It should include materials needed and estimated time for each. So this prompt is good. It's good because it's highly specific. It clearly defines the target audience, the topic, the desired output, the key constraints, and the required elements for each idea. So this level of detail guides the AI to generate relevant actions. If we look at these 2, again, in this instance, they're writing an essay and they wanted to relate to Alan Paton's book, The Beloved Country, and Athol Fugard's Tsotsi, and you're looking at how do you get an essay, see the difference in terms of the detail of these two prompts. So why is this one bad? Well, it's bad because it's general. While it mentions the novel, it doesn't specify the number of themes to compare, the level of detail required, how many points, or the crucial instruction or to not generate actual essay content. This AI might provide a very high level outline, a single theme comparison, or even start writing parts of the essay, which goes against the user's implicit use for a structured outline without full content. Whereas this one was good. So here we're seeing why is it good? Because it's very specific. It clearly defines the target audience, the topic, I haven't put the right one on here. So the same one in terms of the novel, it describes the book in detail, it gives the information, and so the information is really relevant. The other thing that you can do is looking at iterative prompting. So that's what I was describing just now, where you go back and forward. You try an initial prompt, you analyze that, and then you refine that prompt at least once based on the idea. So keep adding more context, changing your tone, asking for a different format. So think about how you can do that. If you looked at all of these different ideas that we've quickly spoken about, what did you learn about prompt engineering by refining your prompt? Is it worth going the extra mile in your planning? And how do we then see that? I really loved this GIF years ago when I found it when I was writing about AI. We really need to think of ourselves as conductors and how we actually conduct within the space. Then we need to think about our learners. Did you know that there's an artificial intelligence assessment scale? This is a 5-point scale going from using no AI to full AI. It was published in 2024. Go and have a look at that. But what these people did is they developed this one, which I think was in the early January. And later in the year, they actually developed another one, which they now call their revised scale. And the differences are quite interesting in terms of how they've looked at it. But I suppose it's something that we can refer to and something that we can consider in terms of when we're looking at policies, when we're looking at how we use AI and the examples that they give. So on this side, it tells you what the description is, what the heading is, and then here it gives you ideas on how you would actually use it within the space. So if we think about institutions, are educators using AI to help formative assessments? And if yes, are they relevant? What is the quality control? Who is doing the quality control within the spaces? And is it working well? How have policies been formulated? And are you aware of them? Do you read them? Do you have input into them? Are there any informal policies on the ground? What's really happening and how are people using AI and what's the discussions that are happening there? Is there a ban in terms of AI? And what do you do about that? And then are there gaps and contradictions around this? And how do we navigate these? And so this area is really complex. And is there institutional support? Is there professional development? And can people grow? And so we know that AI is around. We know that it's been used by our learners. How are you teaching your learners to prompt for learning? How are you getting them to think about learning in terms of artificial intelligence? Can they understand and reflect about bias and information and relevance? Do you get them to do deep searching? Are you aware of an over-reliance for their answers? Is there a lack of opportunity for problem solving in the way that they're using it? Are they aware of bias and misinformation? If you've never watched Salman Khan's video on how AI can save and not destroy education, please go and have a look. Because when we're looking at this, we need to be thinking about ethics and moving forward, which we started off right at the beginning. We explored ethics, bias, the need for policies, the importance of how we craft the prompt, empowering ourselves as lecturers and teachers, teaching our students about it. So we need to think about that. What are the 1 or 2 ethical concerns that come to your mind when you're working with this? How might you Ensure you're using AI responsibly and not simply within that. I'd like you to do something. Consider writing one concrete action to take in the next week or month to either practice critical evaluation, experiment with ethical prompt engineering, or initiate a conversation about critical AI literacy in your school or your classroom or your space. AI can never replace us. We need to take ownership. And if we really take ownership of those spaces and turn our critical lenses on, we will be in that space. So we've used artificial intelligence ethically and explored it from a range of different spaces. Start having the discussions, explore the transparency and fairness, get to know the privacy and data protection, build your own digital literacy and critical thinking and that of your students. Be the human in the loop, develop that collaboration so that it's not seen as replacement. And then think too about mental health and well-being in this digital age, that there's not over-reliance. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karen. This is really a thought-provoking session. You've really given us a lot to reflect on. I don't know if there's anybody in the room that would like to ask Dr. Karen something. Are there any questions? No questions? Okay.
We've got some nice comments and I've made people think and question. So that's very cool. So thanks to those of you who took the time for writing all these comments. So thank you.
Yes, I see that Cornell has a hand is up. Or yes, I don't know.
Yes, it confuses people whether I'm male or female.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you so much, Karen. At least I'm a human male female version, not a humanoid version. But I really enjoyed the session. I was just wondering. I see you've generously shared your contact details, etc. Do you often do sort of webinars or sessions like this? Because I can actually, do quite a few of these. I call it a power hour today.
Yeah.
And is there a way one sort of keeps track, or do you sort of post on LinkedIn, or how do we keep track with Karen and what she shares as excellent?
I've got a little newsletter. I've also got 6 SACE endorsed courses that are on AI, so they're 2-hour workshops. I come to institutions. I've got only one AI one. I haven't had time to do the others that are self-paced. But I'm also happy to do sessions with smaller groups. Yeah, I play.
Perfect. So if we keep contact via your website that you've given, then that would work for us to know when you sort of do courses or your newsletter for subscription, is it?
Yes. So the newsletter will tell you of events coming up or things that are happening. Yeah.
Yes. Good. Thanks very much. But thank you again for a lovely session. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. And as we wrap up, don't forget to join us at 3 o'clock now for the keynote by Prof. Charles Fatal. And that is also followed by the day 1 closing and conference social at 4 o'clock with lucky draws to spin the wheel and exciting per Lego prizes to win at the end of this day. So thank you for attending this session, and thank you again, Dr. Karen, for a delightful session. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.